أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. We make start in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He may guide us to the straight path. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this session beneficial for everyone who is joining us. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shower His blessings for all the participants of this session so that we may enlighten our hearts, our minds, as well as our lives with the teaching of Quran and Sunnah as well as the contemporary knowledge on the subject. Ameen Ya Rabbil Alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to all the sisters joining us here, and inshallah, I hope we will be having more sisters joining us shortly. My name is Dr. Sadia Ahmed. Many of you might be familiar with me. I have been serving as a community leader in some Muslim charities as well as some other institutions like faith forums. And I have been working closely with Muslim community in various projects. And recently, I have developed a platform called Hayat Holistics, in which, through my medical background as well as through various trainings that I have gained over past 10 to 12 years, I have tried to kind of consolidate that knowledge from parenting courses to various Quran and Hadith courses and learning from various platforms and from scholars as well as various modern skill set like emotional well-being and leadership skills, as well as my medical background and functional medicine background. I have consolidated some workshops to be produced as well as given to community, especially Muslim women in current times where we have, I would say, major issues which concern our physical health, our emotional health, as well as various institutes of our life, like the marital institution. And that is the main purpose of this podcast series that I'm starting today, inshallah, biznillah, with Sister Afshan Khan. And I will give you her introduction as well. And this is the first part of this series of podcasts regarding the marriage institution in Islam, as well as the UK community living here and facing these problems which have evolved over time. And we will be starting, of course, with the premarital issues like we will be doing today. And there will be more, inshallah, programs coming up. So I introduce you now to my guest speaker, very dear Sister Afshan Khan. Sister Afshan Khan is an Islamic counselor. She is a psychotherapist and NLP life coach. She is also a youth mentor and teenage counselor. And she has developed, she's founder of Islamic Transformational Core Psychotherapy. She has got a diploma in childcare and marriage counseling. And she has been doing this service for past 40 years, mashallah. She has developed her own therapy, which is helping many people to heal them at an accelerated rate. She's, mashallah, also author of 3 books. She will give herself that introduction to those books regarding the marriage problems. And it is really an insight to those real life stories and scenario-based discussion in those books. And her media platform on the YouTube is called Sukoon Healing, where inshallah we will be posting this recording and as well as the future recordings on the platform. Inshallah, we can share the link to that in the chat box, inshallah, later in the program. So I welcome Sister Afshan to our podcast. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Sister Afshan. How are you?
Walaikum assalam rahmatullahi barakatuh.
It's such a
How are
privilege
you?
to be here, Alhamdulillah. I know we have been discussing and planning for many months now, and
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah, it's qadar of Allah and the predestination. Then when the thing has to happen, Alhamdulillah, we
Yes.
are here. And it's
Mm.
the purpose of the webinar, as I said earlier, is that there is a huge demand from the sisters I have been working with in various parts of UK, and they always say we need to have a consolidated, a structured premarital tarbiyah as well as core training so that the moms themselves, maybe fathers as well, inshallah, and then the boy or the girl who is going to be married, they should be having a consolidated knowledge, which can be, a holistic knowledge, which can be, inshallah, helpful for them to start this big journey. And
Sure.
we all know as believers that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us very clear guidelines when it comes to the institution of marriage. Nikah, which is the most precious bond, which makes the basis of a fundamental, relationship, which is the husband and wife. And together they form a family, which is the core foundation of a society. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given numerous, guidelines in Quran. For example, I won't be quoting all of them, but we all know about Surah Rum, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that marriage is a sign of Allah's mercy. And amongst his sign is that he created of you spouses from amongst yourselves so that you may find tranquility in them. And he placed between you affection and mercy. Mawadda and Rahma. So these are the two main purpose according to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which should be present in nikah. And according to Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the hadith says that a woman is married for four things. That is her wealth, her family status, her beauty, and her deen. And Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam guided us, rather emphasized that you should marry the woman who has good deen. Otherwise, you will be a loser. And when we look at the current statistics in the UK society, we see that UK Muslim community has grown over many decades now. And the institution of marriage is also adopting to the various UK norms, British values, our values from back home, our tradition, our culture, and our religion. So while there are a lot of positive things about Muslim community in UK to keep the bond of nikah and ties of kinship together in this environment, but we are also witnessing a rise in the marital problems of various nature. There is sadly a rising in divorce rate, and there are multiple problems like delays in marriages, or the youth not willing to be married actually, and marrying outside faith, and so on and so forth. So those kind of crucial problems have actually led us to think about those problems, think around them, and maybe propose some solutions to those problems rather than just brushing things under carpet, or thinking why this is happening. Maybe it's written in our predestination. No, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala given us this wisdom so that we can dive deep into these matters, and inshallah, let's discuss some solutions around the topic. Okay. So inshallah, I will now start with some, and also I wanted to mention that the questions I will be asking Sister Afshan, I have done a deep research for collecting these questions from my experience with the community, first-hand experience. Number two, also going through various books and literature around this topic, and also there are real life scenarios from around us that I have gathered to ask questions from Sister Afshan on this topic, inshallah. So, Sister Afshan, I would ask the first and foremost question, that how would you summarize, to start with, what are the most common premarital problems that you, as a marriage counselor, as a psychotherapist, and you work with youth as well, what are those problems? And then inshallah we will go one by one over them. Jazakallah khair.
Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I think the main thing as being a marriage counselor over the years when I'm working with couples is that people don't, number one, know what they want. Number two, they don't ask the right questions because they don't know what they want. And number three, I think we don't look at the reality of marriage. What does it actually mean? It comes with roles and responsibilities. Are we ready for them? So all these obviously things are covered in my first book. So these are the main things that I see, because when I'm doing the marriage counseling, then things will come up and I'll ask maybe the brother or the sister, but if you wanted this, why didn't you ask about this? Or if you knew that he didn't have a good job and finance is very important, why didn't you? So these are the things people aren't asking the right questions. So sometimes I do coaching around what questions to ask. when you are looking for a spouse.
Yeah. Very important. Yeah. We also did one workshop with you, and you told us what are the right questions to ask at the right time. Yeah. So I think the very burning question, which every mother of, a mother who has marriageable age children, and
Mm-hmm.
they see some reluctance from children, and we hear from the other people as well. What is the reason for delaying of marriages, or I would say a propensity to stay single, or choices to be leading a single life because one feels it is right? But what are the main reasons why the girls and boys are not willing to be married actually in first place, and what is the cause of those delayed marriages?
It depends really. I think for a lot of sisters, there is now this what I call economic independence, which is something that obviously they're educated, they have a good job. Sometimes sisters feel that why should they have to get married? They're earning their money. Why do they need a husband for? And these are all things people think when they're maybe in their 20s and 30s. And that soon changes when, sisters become over the age of 35. And then they begin to realize that they do need, because, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us for companionship. We need that. And we are also uh, we procreate because how that's how Allah made us. We want to be mothers. And then I see sisters at the age of 30, 34, 35, and then they're desperate to get married. That's one thing I see a lot with sisters. With brothers, I think it's become a very easy life. They don't want the responsibility. And maybe we're not raising the ummah as we should raise the ummah to be responsible adults. And they don't want the responsibility, and they want to have the single life where they're enjoying themselves. And even after they get married, they still want the single life. And obviously that causes problems. So those are two main things that I see: a lack of responsibility, enjoying themselves, enjoying what they have now. But you can't base your life on now. You have to think about the future.
Yeah. So, like you mentioned, there is certain common factors as well, and that is based around financial.
Mm-hmm.
So, for women, you say when they become financially independent, they feel they don't need the men. And on the other hand, the men may be thinking it's difficult to have someone dependable on me financially, so best not to be, in a relationship so that I have to provide for someone. So,
Mm-hmm.
does it all boil down to finances?
Not always, but I think at the moment, what I'm seeing this new trend, which I'm going to be doing a talk about in this time at a conference, is this element where people are asking for 50-50.
Mm.
This is not part of Islam. This is something that now brothers, when they propose, they say to the wife to be that you pay 50 and I pay 50, so everything we divide in the middle because you're earning and I'm earning. But maybe that doesn't really sit well, because women, they can earn, but they need to be looked after. The reason a woman gets married. So there's a lot of problems around this 50-50 thing that's come up now, quite a lot that I see. And women don't want to, they don't like that. They say, no, we want to be looked after.
Yeah.
Yes, we can help. That doesn't mean that they don't help. But to propose that straight away in a marriage, then that means, well, you're the husband. You're supposed to be providing. That's your role, your responsibility. Yes, a woman can help, but that you don't put all the responsibility on her, because then, okay, then are you going to do 50-50 with the housework? Usually, no,
Mm.
they're not going to do with the
Yeah.
housework.
Mm. So it
So,
means the problem, if we track it down or retrograde, reverse engineer it, it goes back into the, I would say, imbalanced gender roles. It also
yes.
knows, it also results from the lack of understanding of whole institution of marriage. If we were
Yeah.
not Muslims, of course, we can follow some, contemporary world ideas. But when we say that we are believers, of course, the guidelines for marriage, they have to come from Quran and Sirah, isn't it?
Yeah.
Of course, as you said, women can work, women can contribute. Similarly, men may not be working for certain circumstances or some health issues, but that is some exceptions. The general rule should be derived from Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made the men as qawwam. And qawwam, as the root word also says, someone who erects the institute of marriage. So they say the right of nikah is also in the man's hand, the aqd of nikah. So it means he has been given a status, but yet there is a responsibility. But as you
Mhm.
said, maybe we are not raising the right ummah. We are not raising the right daughters to have the balanced gender roles, and we are not raising the right sons to
Mhm.
rightly, I mean, to have the gender role. So how do you see the variation of, or you can say, imbalance of gender roles? Is it like a newer thing, or it was kind of it was generated for past few decades or from the previous generation? How do you see that?
I think from my generation, many, many years ago, men were raised to be men. Okay, you're going to go out to work, you're going to provide, you're the leader. This is on a cultural and Islamic way, but I think more cultural. Muslims are more cultural in this country. We are more around culture. So culture is the man who provides. The woman, maybe if she wants to work, she can work, but maybe it was more work like sewing or working in a factory or things like that at that time. But now, obviously, things have changed so much. Like I said, women are becoming more independent. There's also the thing of feminism that's come in. We're quite, how can I say, influenced by the Western world. So values have changed. They've just changed.
Yeah.
And as they've changed, we haven't changed to meet the demands of the change. So our children are great in a society where everything is changing, but we don't know how to handle it. We don't know what to do. So we're sort of stuck.
Yeah.
And
And
that's why.
also, like with the current financial crisis, and they say because the girls are more, they are doing good in education, they're getting
Yeah,
good, more
it's
good
true.
grades. And it's not just UK. We have seen this trend all over in Muslim countries, in other Muslim countries as well. It's not a Muslim country, but we are seeing it in the Muslim countries as well. So, sometimes people feel like they cannot apply maybe those gender rules which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. So how would you comment on this thing when mothers and fathers they take pride, oh, our daughter is earning so much. So when they are mentally, you know, shifting the gender role of a female into that position, how does it affect? Because you are a therapist as well, you are a psychologist as well. How is the upbringing affects these roles which are to be displayed later on in married life?
I think we've gone from one extreme to another extreme. One extreme was a girl was raised many years ago. I'm sure brother, men as well to be a certain way. So you're gonna be. I can remember when I was going, my mom would say, get married. She would train me knowing that I'm gonna get married, but also she wanted me to be educated. There
Hmm.
was a balance, and to be fair, at that particular time, she was ahead of her times because either it was one or the other. But she wanted me to be educated, and she wanted me to be able to run a home. Because as you know, it doesn't matter how educated you are. At the end of the day, you have to run a home.
Yeah.
You have to. You have children. You have to cook. You have to clean. You have to do all that. So I think that's the issue. That things have shifted so much, and like I said, we don't know how to handle that situation. And I think it's a balance. Yeah, maybe your daughter is earning a lot of money, but will that bring her happiness? Because in my personal experience, I know a lot of sisters in their 40s, they're not married. They've got a lot of money, but they're not happy.
Yeah.
So is
So
that going to bring you happiness,
yeah.
money?
Yeah. So you mentioned about women, of course, they are created in a way that they might be feeling that gap in their life when they're
Of course.
around 40 and they're unmarried. Does it happen with men as well?
Yeah, of course. Of course.
Yeah.
Men are also very lonely.
Mm.
Obviously, because I have worked more with sisters, but I've, at this particular, the last 5 years, I think I've been counseling more brothers than I've ever known on counseling brothers, unless they come with their spouse. And I have seen this trend. Yes, of course they're lonely because, they say man is not an island.
Yeah.
We need Allah's credit. This is why I suppose Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we go to the men go to the mosque 5 times. It's the connection. We need that connection. We need that as a ummah, we need that connection. So
Indeed.
maybe this is the problem here is that, men and women are lonely because we're running after the wrong goals.
Mm.
It's
And
still
I
not
think,
going to bring us any
of
happiness.
course, the effect of loneliness and that's kicks in lately. But when they are in their prime youth, we get these guidelines from Quran, especially Surah Nur.
Mm,
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordered us, especially Surah Nur starts with this
true.
affirmation that these are not just recommendation, they have to be applied in Muslim society and Muslim community, that the singles should be married, and they're
Mm,
all the means to control zina. And we see that when the nikah is made difficult due to various premarital issues, zina becomes easy, isn't it?
Of course,
And of
of course.
course, there is a natural sexual need and desire which have been put into human being, and they have to be under control, or they have to be under within the limits of hudud of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, isn't it? So we
Of
see
course.
a lot of violation on that, and we have to be answerable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I am not responsible just for myself. I have to be
Mhm,
responsible what's going on around me as well, isn't it? So as a
of course.
community objective, we have to see why are there, so many singles in the society, and how we should make things easy for them to be getting married, inshallah. So coming
Mhm,
back to young people, we also see a lot of emphasis, Sister Afshan, on the physical beauty. I
mhm,
feel like when the people are very young, they are not focusing too much on money. Rather, they might be rejecting a person who is earning well, who can take care of a wife and not
mhm.
forcing her to work. But the girls are rejecting sometimes, or even the boys are rejecting sometimes just, oh, I need this height, I need so and so hair, so and so, skin. And then this is age of filters as well. I have learned from a sister who said that the girl came to meet in the premarital meetings with full makeup, and
Mhm,
they didn't know, and I don't know, of course, as you said, the right questions were not asked, or maybe there was no
mhm.
communication properly, and they ended up with the marriage. And afterwards the boy said that the I could not cope with the pigmentation marks on the face of the girl. So I we don't blame in that sense, because
Of
something
course.
was hidden before. So what do you comment on that, or how would you go around this topic?
I think, of course, look, in this day and age, um, and to be fair, when I wrote my first book, my books are all on there.
Yeah.
Um, I wrote about a physical experience, and then when the book was being published again, when they finished stocking, I asked the publishers to put in this extra bit about physical appearance, because makeup has become like it can change the whole of your face. It really can. And yes, it is important. Physical appearance is important. Physical attraction is important, and everybody has their own physical attraction. But it changes the whole of your face. And so afterwards, people, when they get married, and maybe it's very important to them, and they think the woman looks like this, and then she doesn't look like that, it can cause a lot of problems. But it's deliberate. But the thing is, it's all about physical beauty. I'm not saying that. But like I said, everybody has a different attraction. And, if you're going to hide that or emphasize it, and later the person realizes this is not what they got, then there's going to be problems. And I've dealt with many cases, Sister Sadia, about this, where the man said, oh, but she doesn't look like this. Or the women will say, I don't want to do this. That's a deal breaker. He's got to have this height or this beard, or there's just so many things. But what's more important is the person and the personality and the character. That's where you're going to live. You forget about the beauty will fade, yeah. But at the end, is what the person's like.
And I
I
always
always
say,
say this about love.
if yeah,
Yeah,
I always say if
oh,
beauty standards would make marriages work, then the celebrities' marriages should never break up.
exactly, exactly. And I see many couples where I see a woman, she's very beautiful, and the man is he's just okay, and they haven't come to me because of that. They find each other attractive because for everybody is different. And you see a very handsome man, and the woman's okay, but they haven't come to me because there's problems there. So I just find that really, like, it doesn't really matter. It's a personal choice. Everybody has a personal choice. But sometimes we become too picky
Yeah,
about things.
sometimes people are just refusing because of the facial, reasons, or, I mean, physical reasons. And
Mm,
this is such a common saying that, oh, people are missing on good, proposals. And it brings me to kind of remind myself and everyone here about hadith of Prophet Sallallahu when he says, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, that if you find a, proposal or a match who is good in deen, and who's ticking the other
mhm,
comparison criterion, you should marry your daughter. And if you do not do that, or you delay that, you will make corruption in the land. And
of
that's
course.
what we're looking at it.
Hmm.
And sometimes, I would say it also brings in the mentality set up by the mothers. We are too beauty
Hmm.
conscious, isn't it? We do not find the inner beauty as attractive as the physical beauty. And
Of
then we
course.
are very, I would say, judgmental or stereotyped when it comes to beauty standards as well.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
you are
most
very
people.
right to say we can choose for beauty reasons, but if everything is about beauty, this also shows what is my, approach to people. Do I only judge people by the, skin? Do I
Mhm.
only, value the beauty at this current age and time? So many things these days, because again this is a health topic, but due to the additives, due to the processing agents, due to the various type of chemicals, and even the beauty products that we apply to our
Of
skin,
course, yeah.
we are having so much skin disorders now
Hmm.
affecting us, as well as the males, because nowadays males are also exposing their skin to so many products, isn't it?
They are.
Very cosmopolitan now. We're living in different times now. Again, we cannot always give example from previous times, but previous times people would have average I
Mm-hmm.
would say facial features, but they would still get married, and they won't, we won't be looking at such
Of course.
refusals for such mere reasons. So I think it's a
Mm-hmm.
very important thing that we have to again raise the standards of consideration, as well as looking for the values that matter, rather than
Mm-hmm.
always, they say in Urdu, chand si bahu, or shehzade jaisa why we are always setting those standards, prince and princess?
From book, from
Life is
books,
not
I
a
think.
fairy
I don't know.
tale.
But I do think one more thing, Sadia, I do think that people are finding it hard to get ristas. People are finding they're struggling.
It is
And I
very.
know most of my clients, before we had rista aunties, it was word of mouth, or people would go back home and get married. But now, a lot of people, they don't want to go back home, they want to stay in this country. And people are struggling to find good partners. So most of my clients, they find people online. And
Yeah,
that I think
we
we need to
come
do
to
a
the
podcast
topic of
on that.
online, yeah,
Yeah.
matrimonial apps
Because
and
that
the
comes with its own downfalls and
legal
pros
process.
and cons. But
Yes, it
yeah,
has.
so
So we're talking about false expectations. So
yeah.
how would you address that? What kind of expectations usually are, associated with young people? And as you said, when we age, our expectations also become, more realistic. So, how we should address the topic of expectations in marriage, and especially premarital, we have to have certain expectations, but then maybe our expectations are crossing the upper limit, and where we should be more realistic.
That's when people come in. Like for example, I offer pre-marriage counseling. I do coaching for people who are looking for spouses, what questions to ask, what to do, and then is somebody from the family who's a little bit wiser can sit somebody down and say, look, what exactly is it that you would like? Is it do you want a homely person? Do you want a woman that's career orientated, or do you want a husband that wants to move abroad? Sometimes you have to ask those questions, especially as being a mother. You know your child. You know what even if they don't know, sometimes you can say, look, I've seen that you've grown up in a certain way. Maybe you need this. Advise them. Sometimes this is when the older people, the older generation come in and they'll ask the right questions and say, look, this is what you need. And most times, 99% of the time, men want to be looked after and women want to be looked after.
Mm.
See, this is the way I illustrate it as men want to be looked after. So when they come home, they like to have something to eat, and the woman wants love and affection. She wants to. There's all different things that need to be met. So I'm just saying this is something that we really to really think about. We can't follow things from the Western world or the Western. We have to look at Islam. What does Islam say about marriage? What does Islam say about having a spouse, the rights and responsibilities? I think we've got that a bit confused.
Yeah.
That's
So
what I feel.
you're talking about the, various expectations. What are the signs of emotional maturity and readiness for commitment? If we have to see in our own children, or someone is asking us for advice, how we like kind of measure that, if I'm a person who wants to get married, when or how I know that I am now ready for marriage, or what are certain basic, I would say, criterion for someone to get married? They should meet those criterion.
I think we should have that mindset that, in our 20s, so we've done our education, we've done everything. Now, next stage is to be married. Isn't it? If we have that kind of mindset already, this is what I want. I want to get married. And when you talk emotional intelligence, again, that's going to be something like, okay, what is it? What is that you want in a partner? What is it that you're looking for? What is it you want? What are your goals? Maybe sometimes emotional maturity comes later on, but it's really asking that question. Okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said now after this, now we have to do this, for the community, like you said, to lower your gaze. So next thing is to be married. I think sometimes we're not looking at that. What is that we're supposed to be doing next? Because life is like a cycle, isn't it? It goes, you do education, you get married, you have children, you raise good children, and it's like in Islam, it's very smooth how the cycle goes. But somewhere there's been an interruption.
Mm. I
That's what
think
I feel.
it's
There's been a
all people sometimes blame that, oh, we have to break away from certain traditions and cultures in which there were oppression. So that's also trickles down to the new generation and people feeling like it happened to one person, it will happen to everyone. So that is kind of stereotyping and kind of bringing it into every I would say conversation or thinking like this happened to my mother or maybe so
mm,
brittle experiences of our parents maybe sometimes also bring in some negative gender roles and sometimes expectations that oh that should not happen specifically. So I think pre notions also affect our readiness for marriage. What do
definitely. I mean, most of the times I think I do this thing where I do mental blocks.
you
So a sister would come to me, I want to get married, but I'm not getting married. But does she really want to get married? And if you go deep, look a deep dive into her life, you realize her parents had a very bad marriage. So now she's thinking, they had a bad marriage. I have no role models. Do I really want to get married? But inside her, she wants to get married, but she's scared. So I call this like a mental block. So then like you're saying, you say, okay, because you aren't your parents, because they had a bad marriage, just means you're going to have a bad marriage. And then suddenly then she thinks, okay, I'll get married. But the mental block is your mind is telling you don't do it because it thinks you don't want to, but really you do want to. So it's a fight between yourself. And
Mm.
that comes from the way that that's why marriage is so important for your children to see a good marriage, because then they don't want to get married because they haven't seen a good marriage. I mean, this is human nature, isn't it? Don't see something good, you don't want to go there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. If you've seen your father withholding money, if you've seen domestic violence, if you've seen oppression, and then you now, I don't know, say you've done really well, you become a teacher or a doctor or something, maybe you think, why do you want to get married for? Isn't
Yeah.
it? Maybe that's what's in their mind.
Yeah. On a fun note, I always think when people watch dramas, movies,
Yeah, of
they
course.
always say things which happened before marriage. They never mention what happened after the marriage. So the movie ends on marriage. Or rather, it should be the start. So actual life starts after marriage, and that's what, as you mentioned rightly, that we have to have good role models as well. And many youth sometimes just think about some very bad marriage around them, and maybe in family or something, and they always
Mm,
give example. For example, when someone sees a person who is a Muslim and not behaving well or not
mm,
behaving in a good manner, people always give his example or her example rather than giving example of some good people around us. So we might have many good marriages around us, but we also focus on those who have a bad marriage, isn't it? So
mm.
like negativity sometime, you know, uh,
Breeds
gets our
negativity,
more focus here. Yeah.
of
Another
course.
important question is about premarital meeting. So before that, I would also ask some young person. I asked her what questions we should be discussing in the program, and she says, "Auntie, can you ask about whether we should be focusing on family arranged marriages on one hand or one extreme, and the other extreme is doing everything on our own from a youth perspective? What is
Mm.
the best scenario where we can say this is better than having totally fully arranged marriages or totally self choices in marriages? What is in your experience works well?
Well, I always think having parents who are involved in their children's lives and children's choices, I think is very important. But look, I use the word choice. So
Mm.
you guide them, you encourage them because you know your child. And sometimes, children, a lot of times I've dealt with people, they're not happy with whatever partner that their son or daughter has chosen. And sometimes then they were right because once they got married, they had the same problems and they got divorced. But sometimes you have to let your children make those mistakes. You can only guide them. isn't it? You can only guide them, you can tell them. So I think having the balance. So maybe not doing everything by yourself and maybe not doing everything that somebody else wants, but thinking, working together.
Mm.
That's what I
It
say.
should
That's
be
this
a
this work.
combination of both things. It should be a
Yes, with
combination.
yeah, parents or older people in generation, ask people's advice because remember they've been there. It's
Mm.
like if it's like say I crossed a bridge, yeah, I crossed that bridge, and then I look back, and then
Mm.
I look back at the bridge, and I think to myself, I could have done this better, I could have done that better, and then you're teaching your children from what you have learned. Then
Mm.
why do you want to miss out on that? Children should listen to their parents because you're learning from their experience, and then they help you cross the bridge.
Yep.
That's what good parents do, isn't it?
But we also see in our communities two extremes. Either parents
Mm.
are totally opposite, even if
Yeah.
there are people who are good match, they would still oppose it, especially in certain, I would say, ethnicities or certain cultures rather. They become like they feel like it's a shameful thing that someone has chosen on for themselves. So I mean, there
Mm.
is one extreme, and then of course Islam doesn't allow anything haram, but within
Mm-hmm.
normal means people can choose for themselves. So that is also not something forbidden in Islam. And on the other hand, of course, it has to be a Muslim person. We're not undermining that. But on the
Mm-hmm.
other hand, the children or the youth doesn't want any input from parent. That is also an extreme, isn't it? Like you said, especially for in the case of girl, Prophet ﷺ has advised the women to be married by her wali, isn't it? So there is an importance of that. So
Mm-hmm.
another important question arises here, and I remember clearly you also told us in the workshop for pre-marriage. There are certain set of questions that should be asked, whether it is a family arranged marriage or and we are having a premarital meetings, or
Mm-hmm.
it should between the boy and the girl who want to get married themselves. So what are those questions and how, in what order? Like for example, we are meeting for the first time. What should
Mm-hmm.
be the question in the first meeting? And we are meeting now again for the second time. So how it should progress, the conversation and the communication in the premarital time?
I think with the first meeting is really about seeing whether you're compatible. Like for example, in a sense, like is there physical attraction? Do you feel that you can speak to this person? And many is the first is really about your what hobbies do you do? What's your job like? It's very not superficial, but it's very on the surface level. And then after that, you think, okay, I didn't like the brother, or brother liked the sister. Then maybe the second meeting would really be about, okay, like, what kind of goals they have in life, what are their hobbies, what is, the interests, how do they spend their time. And then maybe the third meeting, if it happens, it'd be more around deeper things like their background. Background is a big thing, Sister Sadia. I all the time I hear it from my clients, different background, even to the way that they were raised in a house. For example, if a man is raised in a very clean house and his wife is not very clean, that causes problems and vice versa. So background is very, very important. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't marry somebody from a different background, but if you are going to marry somebody, then make sure that you ask the right questions. Will you be able to adapt to this? Will you be able to, because I think people are unaware how important background is, the way that you were raised, yeah, your
Yeah.
family, the way that, it's so
Yeah.
important. So
So
I see
background,
this quite a lot.
yeah. So with by background, you also mean a background about religion and how we practice our deen,
It could be religion. It could be like a few
lifestyle.
yeah, a few weeks ago, somebody was saying to me that, oh, I come from a family where we all are very close. We sit together and this and their family is like they don't meet anybody. They're very isolated. I grew up like this. And she'll say I grew up like this, and there's something that causes a clash. Now the thing is, we can't look at every single thing in marriage because marriage is like in life is a test. We have to work at it. Not everybody can have a similar background, but for some people, it becomes a big problem. So
Mm.
then I think this is important if you want to ask about like, are you how were you raised in the fact that your background in sense like how do your families meet? I mean, it's up to you because for some people it's very important. They're on premix. For some people they're like, okay, it's okay. So maybe that's a question you need to ask, like Islamically, what is your because people can say they're practicing, but people practice at different levels. For example, a brother may be practicing, but yet he's still free mixing with his cousins. Now that's going to cause a problem
Yeah.
because the woman comes from a family with complete barka. So that's something should have been discussed, isn't it?
Yes.
So that's one of the things. Obviously, finance, I'm afraid, was a lot of problems in marriage. It's not discussed beforehand. Expectations, people don't talk about that. Cultural values, are they similar? Are they different? So these kind of things. And the biggest thing, like I explained to you in the workshop, is the childhood.
Mm.
What was a person's childhood?
So when it comes to childhood or anything that needs to be said truly, what is the kind of, I would say, effect of someone hiding anything, or what are the things which should not be hidden, but then people are hiding? But it also brings me to this question, very fine line, that what are the questions which are too private? They shouldn't be asked. I remember someone told me that, the boy went to meet the parents of the girl, and the mother was asking so many silly questions that the boy just ran off from there. And he says, he asked his mother, "Where did you send me?" So, I mean, of course, we have to follow a certain decorum of questions. Some people ask too much private questions. So, what would be too private and what should be not hidden?
I think once you're thinking of, say, you've seen somebody that you like and you want to marry that person, uh, and then this is between the two people. It's not between the parents.
Mm.
Is between the two people who think of getting married. And you don't have to ask, you can just say something like, oh, where did you like, did you go on holidays when you were, it's not like, did your mom beat your dad up or did your dad beat, it's not like that. I'm saying, but you can just like, how was it? How was school life for you? Did you have a lot of friends? In a gentle sort of way, you sort of, and then maybe the brother might say something or the sister might say something. So you just get an idea, were they happy as a child?
Mm.
Because this is the reason I wrote my second book, is because people coming to me from therapy, and it was always to do with the child. It wasn't to do with the marriage. It was what they went through. For example, if they come to me and the brother has an anger issue, and I will know like five things must have happened to him for him to be angry, and then I would separate them and I would counsel the brother separately. And then one of the things is that maybe he was bullied at school, and for some reason, brothers don't like to talk too much. Like sisters, they might talk to their mother, back to their friend, but brothers don't like to talk about their negative experiences in life.
Mm.
So then you realize he was bullied at school. He has anger against the bullies, nothing to do with his wives. And you work on that. You work on his bullying. You try to heal him, and then suddenly the anger goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the anger goes.
Hmm.
So this is what I'm saying to you. Sometimes it's to really do with so the childhood is something very,
Childhood, yeah.
very important.
Uh, of course, when I'm asking question, I'm asking from both settings. Like, for example,
Of
a,
course, of course.
a boy and a girl, or a man and women, they are themselves familiar to each other. So of course, they will ask these questions more in a
Mhm.
relaxed setting. But when it comes to family meetings, sometimes we are too formal and we hardly find even guts to ask certain questions. And then on the other hand, some people might be asking too many questions. So is it wise to ask about any, or should be, when we are finalizing, for example, the proposal, or someone is we come across certain cases where people say things were hidden from us, and there were some health issues, there were some major, maybe mental health issues, or of course these days the psychosexual issues. How to go around them?
Well, I think there's no guarantees.
Mm.
And you're right, these days people aren't honest. I mean, I've dealt with a few cases where the sister, she had mental health issues and they didn't tell the people. Because, in our culture, sadly, sometimes it's like, shadi kar do, sab theek ho jayega.
Yeah, this is
You
that.
think just get married, everything's going to be fine. And and the girls was very violent. But she had obviously maybe bipolar, maybe other things. So people aren't honest. And I think whole problem just comes back to honesty and sincerity. If we meet together as families and we're open and sincere, for example, if you have a daughter and she's raised in a house where money hasn't been a problem, we haven't indulged her, but money hasn't been a problem. And then we want to know that will they, and this is Islamically correct as well, will the husband be able to maintain her in the manner that she is accustomed to? This is something, a question that you can ask, isn't it? So I think this type of things, yes, you definitely can as a mother. Or what are the expectations? Like if they're going to be living with in-laws, a lot of time people don't even ask. I've heard of stories where the parents haven't even gone to the in-laws' house, and when the bride goes there the first night, they put a little box room, not even enough room for her. So
Mm,
parents have to do what we call due diligence,
mm,
isn't it? If your daughter's going somewhere, then make sure that you're doing some homework yourself around the family.
yeah. Okay. And
Mm.
when things are getting finalized, what is the importance of discussing things like mahar and those kind of some details about some people do discuss some what is it called prenup or something like that, and what do you see a lot of arrangements about that in here in UK?
Um, not really. I haven't really heard of that, but I do know. Come the meher time, sometimes it's a bit of tense time because maybe the parents want a little bit more, and the other parents don't want to, in-law don't want to give that much. So sometimes always a little bit of a tension around that. But I don't see it as like a major issue.
Okay.
The meher, I don't see that as it. They
Because
come to
again,
some kind of
for mahar
understanding.
as well, there are Quranic guidelines for mahar.
Of
So
course, yes, there is.
sometimes
Mm.
people in premarital settings, they want to discuss it. And I have seen many people who very decently go through this topic and they, alhamdulillah, settle it well before
Yeah,
nikah so that things
mm,
are not. But in certain traditional settings, people, start maybe a conflict at that time. So it's best to talk
do it
about it,
beforehand.
yeah,
Yeah,
to beforehand and within
yeah.
our own private families rather than opening it up to anyone to give a suggestion at the time of nikah, isn't it? When it's
No, no, it should be done before the nikah.
yeah,
Definitely should be done.
should be
A lot
done.
of things should be done before the nikah, and then you don't have any problems at that time. It's a stressful day as it is for both families, getting everybody together, family, and then you want to bring the meher issue in at that time. That's
It's
no, no. You
really
discuss those things beforehand.
mm. So what are some red flags that one should be vigilant about when considering someone, maybe in a personal setting that someone themselves are deciding, or as a family we are deciding? What are some red flags?
Okay, so I could just go through some of the cases that I've dealt with.
Yes,
So the
please.
red flag, because I always ask sisters after sadly they're getting divorced or they're having marital issues. I said, "Do you see any red flags for the marriage?" And most of the times, yes, I did. What were the red flags? Okay, he was getting very angry. He actually swore at me, or maybe the brother might say that, oh, having a lot of issues with her parents. We couldn't decide things. So a lot of things do happen beforehand. And people shouldn't ignore those red flags. And they always say, "Oh, I wish I hadn't ignored the red flags. They were there, but I ignored them." So anything happening before the marriage that you're uncomfortable about, that doesn't sit with you. Sometimes you have this gut feeling, this doesn't seem right. But sometimes people say, well, we set the date, and then, what could we do? We couldn't do anything. The better that you break this up now, then later on, you have to go through a divorce, which is much more difficult. Sometimes there are completely open signs. Sometimes there's no signs. For example, if a person is a narcissist, there are no signs. So narcissism is a different topic altogether. Something that I deal with quite a lot. And again, I've written about it in my
Yeah,
book. So we don't know this. There's just no guarantees. I think sometimes people think whatever test Allah is going to put us through is going to happen.
yeah,
How do we deal with that test? Isn't it? Hindsight is a big thing. And that's one of the reasons I'm want to do the podcast with you, because the things I've learned over the 40 years, things that help the ummah, then I thought, maybe we should get these things out there, make it easier for people when they're going for marriage and they know what questions to ask. There's no guarantee,
there's no
but
guess.
it helps to know some of
Yeah.
the things that we're talking about today.
Also, we see these kind of things when we study Quran and Sirah. Even marital problems, they were part of even the prophetic lives as well, and
Of course,
Sahaba's lives as well. So we can't say we are guaranteeing that our son or our daughter would not face anything. But of course, on a general level, we have been given guidelines. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us what should be the main qualities to look for in a person. Then Prophet ﷺ has given us criteria. Then we also see that Allah Ta'ala has given us this opportunity to do istikhara with Allah Ta'ala, asking, seeking divine counsel. And then, of course, we should also take advice from some, wise people around us, like mentors, or maybe people who know the family of the girl or the boy, at least getting some, feedback or some kind of, uh, knowledge about what are their values and what is, as you said, their background. But having said that, of course, some things will still be going difficult in everyone's married life. Life is a test as such. So, having said that, people do not, we have difficulties in degrees, but no one says, I will not do a degree because it is very difficult degree,
Of
isn't it?
course.
So we
Hmm.
should not be improvising in a way that, okay, because the married life is difficult, I should just refrain from it. So again, coming from mothers, parents, their tarbiyah is very important. And that brings to my next, again, premarital, I would say, issue that we see a lot in our community, sadly, not just in UK, everywhere around, especially back home in, South Asian, countries, that we focus too much on the wedding day.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's not about marriage, it's about wedding. And, people spend so much on that one day and time, their skills, their money, and especially in such, difficult financial times, sometimes it's not wise to spend that much on just show off and this and that. And mothers, especially, I always say in my, Quranic talks and my sessions that for the, spiritual well-being, we say that we have to focus on the tarbiyah of our own children before they get
Mhm.
married. Especially, they're not children at that time. Of course, they are young people,
Oh,
young
yeah, oh, yeah.
professionals. They are about to start a family, the big decision of their life. So how do you see, and people have not done their children or their sons or daughters tarbiyah, what kind of issues you see then?
Well, there's obviously there's like for example, this is the first thing I wrote about in my first book, Secrets to a Successful Marriage.
Mm.
It's all about the day, the dress, the cutlery, this, but nobody thinks, okay, I'm leaving my parents' house. I'm going to be living with other people, or maybe just with my husband. Have I even thought about it? But they haven't thought the change. So that obviously causes problems. Now, regards to tarbiyah, it just really depends. For example, if you've raised children that are spoiled, so you've given them everything that they want, they're not going to be responsible adults. They will not be able to run a house. They will not be able to look after themselves because they're so used to mummy doing everything. So that causes a lot of problems. So that's why I'm saying sometimes we're not raising the children to be adults. We're raising the children to still be children.
Mm.
That's a big problem.
You
So
know, when you
tarbiyah,
ask the question, can you run a house? Some people get really offended that why it's women,
why?
women
Why do
have,
they get? Why do they
why
get
do they
offended? I
get
don't
offended?
understand. It's like me saying to, um, I don't know, if I'm going to drive a car, and somebody says to me, "But are you going to drive a car? Are you going to sit in a car? Are you going?" Of course, there are means, isn't there? I'm going to learn to drive, then I'm going to have a car, then I'm not going to just have a car and not learn to drive. It's of course it's important, and this is one of the main reasons people are going, poor sister Saudi, I have to tell you, is because when men get married and women get married, the women can't look after the house, the men can't take care of the house, and that's what leads to. He will say she can't cook and clean. She will say he doesn't know how to run a house. He's really bad with his money. He doesn't know how to save. So these are skills we have to be teaching our children to be
Mm.
adults, isn't it? You teach them at a young age to be like that. So this is tarbiyah is a very, very big thing.
Yeah.
That's
And it
why I
comes
always talk
to a
about,
well-rounded tarbiyah. It shouldn't be just learning about Quran and Sunnah, because Quran and Sunnah also teach us to have a whole, well-rounded skill set,
of course.
financial maturity, emotional maturity, and
Mm,
also to be well versed with how to communicate with people of various ages. And of course, sometimes we see there is this traditional thing that women has to do good with their in-laws, so she is taught all her life that you how you have to behave with other people. But then sometimes the sons are they're lacking basic manners when it comes to, so, treating the in-laws, isn't it? So again, it is a lot to do with human rights, roles and responsibilities. And we are living in time when it is about all about me, myself, I,
And
and it's
I'm
why
afraid
it's about
so.
my rules and regulations.
Yeah,
So how do
it's
you
all
like
about me.
a lot of emphasis on my rights and nothing to do with my roles and responsibilities?
That is true. I'm afraid that's the thing that we're dealing with. Mental health is all about me, and that's causing a lot of issues in the marriage. And you mentioned manners. It's really important. I think that's something that's is really missing. And we're not teaching our children manners either now. And it's such a heavy on the scale, the manners. And Prophet ﷺ said, our characters, our manners. But when I was at school, a very long, long, long time ago, I was raised in this country, and I was raised at a time where morals, manners, teaching others with respect. So some of the things, even though didn't go to Muslim school, we learned from there because we went to a school that taught us that. Now it's all about disrespect, isn't it? Don't respect or stay from your parents, all these things is in our children's head. That's what they don't. That's why teenagers sometimes don't listen to their parents because they think they're the worst enemy. But it's really how we have to learn how to do tarbiyah with wisdom now, with
Mm,
the way that we are with our children, and that's really something that I've learned a lot about parenting, how to parent now, not 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Things have changed so much now that we have to understand. If we
yeah,
want our children to still be close to us and close to our deen, we have to instill that when they are young.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
manners is such a beautiful thing. Saying
yeah.
thank you, opening the door. Nobody does that anymore,
Mm.
isn't it? And it's such an important thing.
I was listening to a session by a psychologist who is also a biologist. He says that with current, very, I would say, pampered lifestyle of both boys and girls, people have
Mm-hmm.
lesser number of children, so they spend a lot of money on the children. Now we're surrounded by such families who the boys and girls all are sitting all day long in their rooms. They have everything. And as you said earlier, the mom is doing everything for them or father is doing everything. So he said that their dopamine level is so high. It's all about self, pleasing things. And that makes people more selfish. And when it comes to marriage, if one is selfish, of course it is going to affect the relationship and how they will
Of
be behaving in the house, isn't it? So we
course,
are we are not saying just the men will be selfish or just the women will be selfish. We're seeing both genders
of
becoming very selfish, and that is also affecting a lot when it comes to sharing responsibilities and taking I would say responsibility as a equal part in the marriage, isn't it?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Of
Mm.
course, of course,
That sometimes it does feel a lot of pressure how to undo all of that, because it's really a big task, isn't it?
it is, and
Especially in olden times, as you said, there was this joint role of teachers, parents, and mentors. So, like
exactly.
a nani or a dadi, like a grandmother would be a mentor. Maybe a khala would be a mentor. Maybe someone
Mm-hmm.
in the family would be teaching good manners to the children,
So
as well as some neighbor would
the
also say
teacher,
the same thing. And the teacher
mm-hmm.
would also say the same. The books will also say the same thing. And even the programs on TV were also saying the same thing. And now we see such a big hollow or a gap when it comes to morals and manners. And even the media is portraying such mannerless things. Similarly,
Yeah,
the slang languages and these feminism and Me Too kind of movements and LGBTQ all are actually affecting the institute of marriage, isn't it?
of course, of course, of course. But we have to make sure that we have an agenda ourselves as parents, that what do we want for our children. And sometimes we think about giving them everything they want now, but not thinking about their future. Because parents that are wise, they have to think, who am I raising? Yeah, this Muhammad or Fatima, they're gonna grow up one day. What do I want them to achieve? You want them to achieve the best in this din and dunya. For us as Muslims, that's what you want.
Mm.
So, sometimes we can't blame the young people. We can't, because we haven't done our job properly, because we don't know where we are going wrong. And that's why these podcasts are so important for us to know that, we need to understand what to do, how to
Yeah.
speak to our children and make them realize that they have a role to play.
Yes.
They're not
Yes.
always going to be.
Mm.
living with us, whatever. They're going to be responsible adults. So teach them responsibility from young. A lot of children these days, they don't do chores. They don't, because, and they say the child that does chores becomes to be an intelligent adult.
Yes.
At a young age, when I do a workshop on parenting, even at the age of 2, a child can do chores. Tidy up your room, pick up your toys. So you
Mm.
teach them responsibility. But a lot of people, then when they become teenagers, then they complain they're not doing this and not doing that. But did you teach them when they were young?
Yeah.
Not when they're teenagers. So this is the thing. All these things they affect a marriage.
Yeah. Yeah.
All these
I
things.
think so much can be said about the tarbiyah. So it all boils down to tarbiyah because we can't just fix when, when for the Gaza, they say it did not start on 7th October. This is an
Yeah.
problem which is here for 75 years. So similarly, I spoke to Brother Noman Ali Khan in a seminar. He came here and I spoke to him about the same marriage issue because it has been in my mind, about it, and I've been working on. So he again said the same thing. He says the problem that our youth doesn't want to get married, the problem lies with the certain cultural practices, the lack of deen, all those factors. He said they need to be first rightly put in right place, and then the outcome will change. We cannot just figure, and sometimes we are also displaying some hypocritic standards as parents as well. For our own son we have different standards, for our daughters we have different standards, for other people's sons and daughters we have different standards. And similarly, as I said, we are also sometimes very fond of having those wrong cultural practices when it comes to marriage,
Mm.
working on dowry and those kind of things which make marriages difficult. So we have to lift the burden. Our Prophet ﷺ said that Allah has given this Sharia to us because it is not as burdensome as the previous Sharia. And we are adding burdens to the institute of nikah and marriage and making it very difficult. So, us as parents, us as women of the ummah, we have to first mend our ways so that inshallah our next generation can benefit from it. Another topic which is very important is about, as you said earlier as well, sometimes people delay their marriage and then they become too desperate, and then comes another issue, and that is they will settle for anything. And there comes the issue of going through some matrimonial service or maybe matrimonial apps. So these apps, I am hearing some people saying they are benefiting, but then there are very horrific stories also coming out of it. So would you tell us something about how the apps are helpful or unhelpful?
Well, look, with everything, there's pros and cons. Before, parents would look for their children. It was very rare that, you'd go and look. And the parents would look in their own culture, their own brotherly, or their old somebody back home, or whatever they would look. So the children would leave it up to their parents. But now, obviously, because of being the way that children are practicing as well, the parents sometimes don't understand that, or their parents don't understand the needs of the child sometimes. So now children are looking for themselves. Adults are looking for themselves. They're for children, but then now the adults look for themselves. So there's some apps. Obviously, like I said, most people are getting married on apps. There are a few apps that are quite popular, but you're right. You hear some very, very sad stories what people are doing on there as well. So like some of their brothers aren't very serious about marriage. Sometimes they'll just string somebody along for a year and then they'll do what we call ghosting. So they'll disappear. So all these phrases are not coming out now, all about looking for people online. The good thing is that, yeah, people are finding people on there, and there are good marriages. I have seen that as well. But there are also very difficult things are happening, and I'm hearing more sad things and more less positive things. So
Yeah,
I
some
think they
people
need to be
find it.
monitored.
Yeah, some people
I think they
can
need to be
breach
monitored a
the
bit more.
privacy. Yeah, has to be
Yeah,
monitored. And also
they're
do
not
use them
monitored.
with cautious, especially in times of AI and so much, horrific things coming up. People, even using someone's sound and someone's imaging on different things. We are living in times of,
Mhm.
deception. So we have to be really careful. Sometimes young people are very, I would say, fearless to step into new things, but they have to be careful as well. And
Mhm.
as I said, sometimes the things are not genuine as they are looking. Um, there is another thing about premarital in our culture. Sometimes people do want to, communicate with other family or the girl with the boy,
Mhm.
and they want to meet in private. They want to meet outside. So what would you about it? Of course, in Islamic setting, one cannot do that quite often. So how we should look at it when boy says, okay, I want to meet the girl privately, and then of course if it is like one or two meetings, they insist on meeting more. So is there a limit how we should be deciding in certain time? And more than that, it's just like, waste of time, or it's just like, beating around the bush.
I think it's really important. Maybe we should do a really podcast on this, on what's happening on these marital apps. But I would say, look, what's happening is that what happens, the boy and the girl, they'll meet on the apps. They sometimes exchange numbers, sometimes they don't. And if they fit the criteria, then they'll meet in a coffee shop. Now, what usually happens is they might bring either their friend with them, or their brother with them, or somebody, or their mom with them, and then the two will meet. And if they like each other, if they think this is going to go ahead, then the second meeting they'll bring their mothers to the meeting, and then maybe the third meeting they will come again to the coffee shop. Then they invite each other to each other's houses. After the first and second meeting, then they invite them to each other's houses. They have the meeting there, and then after maybe another meeting at the boy's house, and then now it's going to look as though they are ready to maybe call it yes or
Right.
no.
Mm.
So I would say, you know, if it goes on for 6 months, if it goes on for a year, you're meeting and you're still not coming, then this is not good. So
Mm.
I say maybe 4 or 5 meetings, and then obviously then decide from there. Is it going ahead? Is it not going? Uh, the word that comes up is people call some people players. So they're just on there to have a good time. They're not there to seriously get married. So then after 3 meetings, 4 meetings, okay,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
you have
sometimes,
decided.
sometimes people are prolonging the engagement or something like that too much, and then the problems also start in the premarital uh,
Hmm.
time period. And that also sometimes people discover some red flags while they are still
Of
waiting
course.
for marriage to be,
Hmm. Hmm.
done actually. So
Hmm.
again, as you said earlier, rather than going into nikah and then having to divorce, it is better to look into the difficult issues that are arising while this in.
Never ignore the red flags. Never, never, never
Mm.
ignore the red flags. They're there for a reason. And you said mention istikhara. Sometimes people say to me, "Oh, but I did istikhara and then look, all went wrong." And istikhara is not there just for you, give you a guarantee. This is the Allah's way of telling you this is the path that you've chosen. This was your test. Inshallah, you come out of this test better because you asked obviously Allah, is this okay for me? But that was your test. It
Yeah.
doesn't guarantee that you're gonna have a really good marriage. It
Mm.
means that this was your test, this solution for you. Maybe Allah's got something better to do for you. But
Yeah.
istikhara is very, very important that you do the istikhara. But don't think this is the guarantee that you should have a really good marriage. It's not about that istikhara. So
Yeah, it's
just to
just like
mention.
sometimes we tell people that we should pray because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has done this obligation
Hmm.
on us. But
Hmm.
sometimes people think like we are praying and we should not face any difficulty now because we are praying. So how come I'm good in salah, then still I'm having problems? So this is and a whole philosophy as a holistic way has to be understood. We have to clearly see things which are un-Islamic, to not do them. But of course, within the frame of marriage, of course, people will be tested, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make things easy for us. I would say,
Ameen.
the sisters, we are almost reaching the end time because this podcast was till 8:15 because we are
Hmm.
keeping in mind the time for Maghrib. But if anyone wants to ask any question, can you please type into the chat box? And inshallah, I can ask Sister Afshan. So, Sister Afshan, in your experience with the emotional maturity, the financial things, of course, we have to keep in mind the physical health. I didn't mention that because mothers also have to look into the physical health of the boys and girls, because our physical health also matters a lot when it comes to marriage, isn't it?
Of course,
To
of course.
have healthy habits, to have good sleeping habits, to have a good when it comes
Diet. Yeah.
diet, as well as some common health issues which can be treated. So if someone has this issue of always low on iron and always having headache and sluggishness, how we are going to cope with the marital
Hmm.
life challenges, isn't it? I'm always in bed because I am unwell. That doesn't give a good sound to people when they get married. So it's very important that we also take care of good healthy habits as well. So it has to be a holistic
Of
way.
course.
In your experience as a marriage counselor, as a psychotherapist, what is the best age for marriage in current contemporary world?
Good question. I mean, my personal opinion, I think around 22 you should start looking. 21, 22. But
Okay.
that doesn't mean that, you before that, and you have a really good, rishta, a really good proposal, that you disregard that. Yeah. But I think for brothers, emotional maturity kicks in more around 24, 25.
Okay.
Sisters, as we know, mature very quickly.
Mm.
So some sisters have got married at 18 and they're completely fine. So it just depends. But I think because people don't realize it takes time to find somebody. So say you start looking at people say, oh, this is a very young age. This is my personal opinion. Start at 22. I mean, I started looking at my daughter, she was 20. So and she didn't get married, she's 24.
Mm.
So, this takes time. Sometimes you can find somebody, but this takes time. So remember that. So you start looking when you're 26. And then sister said to me, oh, I'll be looking since I was 24, 25, 26, 27. Now I'm 33, haven't found anybody. So remember that. And then I guess it does come down to personal choice. This was my thing that I think people should start looking at 22. Sisters should start looking at 22.
Yeah, yeah. A sister has asked, how can we go about asking for the right amount of mahar? So
I think you can,
how to even
yeah.
talk about it? Yeah.
No, no, you should because this is the thing you have to and just look, this is something according to what the brother's earning. You ask according to what your needs are, isn't it? So, and then if they disagree, then you can say, look, we prefer to have this or we prefer to have that. Or they may say, well, we want to go with the sunnah thing, but you may say, well, not really, we would like this. So you have to compromise, and it's just not about the meher. There's so many other things that you falls, this, what you're gonna give, all these kind of things. It's like you have to talk about this, and people shouldn't feel offended because you have to be honest, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Also, again, in the
If that's
guidelines
what you want for
for
your daughter.
for mahar, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said in Quran that the mahar should be given with wholeheartedness. So there should not be stinginess.
Yeah,
But on the other hand, we shouldn't be
that's
greedy
exactly.
for our daughter to, oh, in case of something happens, so we should have some financial security. So let's grab everything what we can. So one should not be greedy, and on the other hand, one should not be stingy. It is according to the earning capacity of the man. And of course,
That's
there
right.
are two ways. Either they should be paid right away on the time of nikah, and or it can be, postponed. But again, it is a debt for the women from the men, so it has to be paid. Do we have any
Mm-hmm.
marital counseling available where people are taught about the kind of issues people face and how to manage them without breaking down? I find that Christians do have that, but we have not heard about it in the mosques. Some of the mosques are offering, but you're right that we do not have that much developed premarital counseling session. Now, sisters and brothers are talking about it, and some mosques are saying we are training our imams to be giving that. We plan to, inshallah, develop such workshops where it could be for boy and for a girl, and then for the parents as well. So, Sister Afsha, in your practice, if there is anything, then you can tell, inshallah, about
Yes,
the.
I do. Obviously, I do family therapy as well. So I do pre-marriage counseling, I do family therapy, I do coaching for marriage, I do coaching in what to ask when you're looking for a partner. So all these things, but you're right, we do need more of these. We do need to obviously train our imams and train more people around. I think the main thing is people we need to know about mental health. I think we're still lacking behind in
Yes.
this. Mental health. We need to understand what mental health is like depression, anxiety, how it affects. Because a lot of people they get married and they haven't told their husbands that I suffer depression or OCD as well.
Yeah,
So
also,
I think these
you're
things,
right.
we need to look at that. It doesn't mean you can't marry somebody who has this, but you'd have to learn to manage the symptoms. Are you okay with that? Or how can you deal with it? How you're on medication? So, this is, you have to be open about your mental health as well. And I think sometimes people are not very open about mental health. They shy away from talking about that.
You're very right. So this
This
is
is
the book
important.
which also addresses the premarital. Sorry, it is coming up.
Yeah, of
reverse
course.
order,
Yeah.
but it's called Successful Marriages by Sister Afshan. And I think you're in the background, we can also see where Sister Afshan is sitting. So there's a set of three books, and the first book addresses the premarital issues and scenario-based setting. And yes, there are certain mosques and certain platforms who offer premarital, but again, sisters, we have to learn from these workshops and then, inshallah, mold them into our own tarbiyah model for the house, because it's very important. Dr. Yasir Qadi has also done a whole series which is called Like a Garment. And there are certain psychosexual issues as well, which sometimes we are shy of to talk about, but then there is a proper Islamic way about that as well. So, Alhamdulillah, we have certain sisters who are trained, certain brothers who are trained for these sessions. So, it is very important to have a proper overall a holistic way to approach this before the marriage. And it's sad that, as I said earlier as well, there's so much time, effort, and money goes into preparation of the wedding day. If we had given like half of it or even one fourth of it to the
Mm-hmm.
preparation, the mental preparation, the emotional preparation, as well as the Islamic guidelines for marriage, I think we would see different results, isn't it? Inshallah.
Definitely, definitely. Yes, yes.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So, how would you conclude then? What are the most important points to consider when it comes to premarital? Just to conclude, and inshallah, we will then finish it.
I think the best thing to conclude is number one is whoever is thinking of getting married, they have to know what they want. That's the biggest thing. I think people don't know what they want. Do you want somebody who is a homemaker? Do you want to marry somebody who is a career maker? Do you want to marry a man who's just always out working? Do you want to marry a man just for his money? Is all these things, question you need to ask yourself. And I think we don't ask that enough. What is it that we want? And what is a deal breaker? If you look at my book, that's the things I go through. Either out of 10 things you want, you pick seven, or you pick out of five, you pick four. Out of five, you pick three. Alhamdulillah. You can't get all seven. You can't get all 10. Be realistic. So
Mm.
look at what you want first. That's the first thing I would say to you. And then ask the right questions according to what.
Yeah. And I think
So this,
also it brings us to the, too much impressionable when it comes to believing the social media pictures and sharing of other
that's it.
people and thinking,
That's it.
as you said, we cannot have it all. This is this world's, my dear sisters. We cannot make it Jannah. We say, oh, home like Jannah or heavenly relationship or heavenly homes and heavenly, venues. Nothing can be like heaven in this world. It is, we can just try to make it good for us, but it is a temporary abode. We cannot
Mhm.
find Jannah here. The Jannah relationship will be in Jannah, inshallah. They say by, a kind of in a fun way as well, that the husband that I want, I will only find in Jannah. And the wife my husband wants, he will also only find in Jannah. So we can only try, and of course, we will be answerable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for our role as mothers.
Mhm.
For tarbiyah, I always say that we are our each child is one of our question paper for the day of judgment.
Mhm.
How we have raised them, isn't
Mhm.
it? And when it comes to their marriage, again, if we are cutting corners or we are undermining the rights of someone, or that's why in the nikah sermon, four times Allah, the ayah says ittaqullah. So it's
Mhm.
very important
Mhm.
in premarital times as well that we should be
Mhm.
fearful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Beautiful.
It comes to the wedding day, when it comes to the rights and responsibilities, when it comes to giving guidelines to, sometimes the women are giving all the negative guidelines to their daughters before
Mhm.
marriage. And
Yeah, it's
sometimes the
true.
women are giving all the negative guidelines to their sons before marriage.
Mhm.
We have to be fearful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We should give the positive message, positive, guidelines, as well as we should get benefit from people like yourself. And there's so much material available, and I have been giving this book as gift to brides for past 10 years, because I think it's such a big gift to give to a newlywed couple, or maybe a girl or a boy to be married at least 6 months before their marriage. They should be working
Mhm.
on these things. So I
Sure.
hope this thing was beneficial. Inshallah, sister has asked about this workshop that was for our training, Inshallah, we are planning to do a workshop as well together for this same topic, as well as we will be having now another podcast about marriage itself. What are the issues and areas surrounding the actual marriage, matter, and then post-marital issues and post-marital problems,
Inshallah.
inshallah. So we will be sharing this recording on the Sukoon Healing YouTube channel of Sister Afshan. And also, I will share on the Hayat Holistic, that the platform I run for well-being, holistic well-being of the Muslim women. And I also plan to do some workshops around the topic of menopause, topic of pre-diabetes, topic of mental health issues like especially anger issues and depression or OCD, and similarly many other things regarding lifestyle changes. So we need to focus on these areas which, so that our output as abd of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increases, and inshallah we all are in a test on this world, in this on this earth. So we have to perform and function in the best possible way, and these skill sets, these sources of knowledge, they are a blessing to have, inshallah. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant you immense ajr, Sister Afshan.
Jazakallah khairan.
It's really pleasure
Jazakallah
to
for
have you
inviting me.
here. And I hope sisters have benefited from today's. We kept it very simple, as you can, I think you have experienced as well. We wanted to have like a drawing room chat, heart to heart discussion, all the
Mhm.
questions which I could think of regarding premarital. But if there are more questions, you can always send us, and inshallah we can discuss them in upcoming topics, upcoming podcasts, inshallah. Jazakallah khairan. I will finish with the end of session dua. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wal asr innal insana lafi khusr illa allazina amanu wa amilu salihati wa tawasaw bil haqqi wa tawasaw bis sabr. ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant the best of wisdom, as well as the sakina, the rahma, the blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in all the relationships which are going to be made, which are already made, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the eternal relationship of Jannah
Ameen.
with these relationships on this world. Ameen Ya Rabbal Alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah khairan, everyone to join.